Bill Peduto is your choice for mayor this election. The transparency candidate always puts everything on the table, clean and easy for the voters like you to read and understand. Bill Peduto standing up to big companies like Amazon and UPMC, the shining beacon of transparency in Pittsburgh. Vote Bill Peduto in this upcoming election. That's going to be the campaign message that you'll hear for Bill Peduto's re-election campaign. The transparency candidate. He has a knack for going one way and then campaigning the completely opposite way. It's crazy. He's going on Twitter and Facebook, pushing the Amazon plan into the public, making believe that he's being transparent. That's the message that's coming out of the mayor's office right now, all over. I just shared one of his posts where he's going on and on, posting about the plan, pretending as if he's doing some sort of civic duty to the people of Pittsburgh. It's crazy. It's insane. And you know what? It's going to work probably. He's the same candidate that tried to push the entire lead situation under the rug and then ran as the clean water candidate and won. One running as the clean water candidate, and you know he's going to run as the transparency candidate as well. That's how he got into office, if you don't remember. He ran on a campaign of transparency. A campaign of transparency, and now here we are, backroom, smoke-filled deals with major corporations giving huge breaks to poor, little, feeble Amazon who just can't afford to pay their fair share. That trillion-dollar company who can't afford to pay their fair share. We're going to talk about his travel, Bill Peduto's travel. An interesting investigation came out from KDKA we're going to talk about here on River Talk with Brian Crawford. We've got Zach Fehl here as well. We're going to be talking about 1 year of heavy metal radio in Pittsburgh, changing the music landscape. We've got Victoria Shineman, who's an assistant to the professor. Is that correct? Assistant professor at the University of Pittsburgh. That's why I just wanted to say professor, because I knew I was going to mess that up. We're going to be talking with her about a study that she did in Florida dealing with the voting situation down there and people who do not have their right to vote or did not have the right to vote in Florida, which can shape a lot of the elections down there as well. It's crazy. The Amazon thing, they pushed out what the Pittsburgh offer was, right? They put it out there. One of the big things was Amazon was going to get money back in taxes from their employees. So right off the bat, we're losing that because no major corporation in Pittsburgh seems to be forced to pay any kind of taxes. And even though that we did not get Amazon, it's going to two different places, New York and then down near D.C., this issue isn't an issue that's dead. In fact, this issue, we need to focus on this issue. We need to just really get started hammering in on the issue of transparency. Now, what will happen is that Amazon is not coming here, as we will forget about it. Time will pass. We'll forget about it, and then the next multi-billion or trillion-dollar corporation will come in, and we'll have the same old song and dance. This is really when we need to hammer down. This is when we need to make sure that we hold this administration accountable. They received not one, but 2 court orders to release the Amazon deal under a Freedom of Information Act, and they snubbed their nose at the courts. 2 court orders. Unacceptable for the transparency mayor here in Pittsburgh. We have a right to know as citizens, and it's weird because I'm in a situation, we live in a weird situation where I don't live in the city here in Millvale, where the River's Edge broadcasts out of Mr. Smalls at riversedgepgh.com. We don't live in the city, but if Amazon was to come to the city, I would be affected in a big way. My prices would go up. It's a weird situation where the city hasn't merged with the county, despite Allegheny County not really being a very big county, despite having this mid-sized city within it. So we're all affected by it, but we don't have a say in the process. So I'm counting on you who live in the city to hold him accountable. And if he continues down this line, it's time to make a change at the top. An interesting investigation came out. We're going to continue to talk about the Amazon situation throughout the show. We're going to talk about this travel situation. This is interesting. A study came out, or an investigation from KDKA, which shows that the mayor has traveled for almost an entire year's worth of time in his 5 years as mayor. Over 200 days, 276 days out of town in 5 years. 9 trips out of the country. 88 trips total. And it was a total cost of $131,000. Now, only $27,000 plus came from the actual city dollars. But according to the city controller, this affects the city in a much bigger way. Michael Lamb says that with the mayor out of town, he cannot handle issues here in the city. Now, the mayor argues that he's going out as an ambassador for the city. He's trying to bring in companies like Amazon to not pay taxes and raise the property values and the cost of living and all of that. That's what he says. He wants to bring in tech companies. Don't forget, he also did leave the country to study bike lanes. But one of the big things that he wants to do is bring in tech companies. Well, I have a question. Hello, Mayor Bill Peduto. Have you ever heard of Hangouts, Skype, FaceTime? I've got like 3 different ways to video conference someone right here on the phone. I would imagine that a tech company would appreciate a basic understanding of teleconferencing and video conferencing, right? Bike lanes, Google Maps. It's amazing. Right now you can actually go in with satellite images and see exactly where the bike lanes are over in Europe without traveling the country. One of the issues that has come about through the mayor skipping town, leaving town, apparently, guess who's not paying their cut? UPMC. Remember the big lawsuit? Luke Ravenstall. Say what you want about Luke Ravenstall. He did come down on UPMC. Day 1 in office, Bill Peduto dropped the lawsuit to force UPMC to pay their share in taxes, saying that, UPMC, they'll give us donations. They'll more than make up for what they owe in taxes. Well, apparently, they're not. Apparently, they're behind. They're not paying what they said they would. That's according to Michael Lamb in this investigation. And one of the reasons is Bill Peduto isn't around to knock on their door. A lot of times people will pay. They're not even skirting you, but you have to actually knock on the door. If someone's not there asking for the money, of course you're not going to necessarily give it up. I mean, that would be the right thing to do, but a lot of times that's just not the case. Ask anyone in billing. It's crazy. We're going to talk about that. I want to hear your thoughts. We have the Facebook Live feed available. That's at River Talk PGH on Facebook. You can tweet the show at River Talk PGH, and of course you can text us at 412-407-2PGH. That's 412-407-2744. I'm Brian Crawford. This is River Talk. This is the River's Edge Radio Network. Don't forget that you can ask your Amazon Echo, speaking of Amazon, to play the River's Edge. Just say, Alexa, play the River's Edge station on TuneIn, and you can hear local music right there. Also at riversedgepgh.com and on the TuneIn radio app. We're going to welcome in a friend of mine who is a professor. I can call you a professor, right? I know you're, yes, okay. A professor at the University of Pittsburgh, Victoria Shineman. She is here, and you did this study. And the study, it was done for the university, or was it done for PBS?
It was done as part of my research as a professor at the university. Okay,
and you've been studying voter information throughout different, I saw in Ohio, but also in Florida, and that's where your most recent study was done in Florida, dealing with voting laws that restrict access to voting.
So my most recent study was actually in Virginia,
Oh,
but
okay.
it has really big implications for a ballot measure that just happened in Florida.
Okay, great. So you're talking about one of the big issues is the concept that people are being restricted in their ability to vote based on having a felony, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so what constitutes a felony? Because I know in Florida you were saying it goes beyond what we typically would think of as a felony.
Well, yeah, I mean, each state gets to decide their own laws, right? Which crimes would be a felony would vary by state. So in Florida, it's one of the most strict states in the country. So there's right around the time when African Americans were given the right to vote, the state changed a lot of the laws. So one example is they made a lot of laws associated with poverty felony crimes instead of misdemeanor crimes. So for one of the most extreme examples is if you steal something worth $300, that's a felony in the state of Florida, where in other states it would not be.
Which, like, that's something very simple. Like, this computer is worth more than $300. So if somebody were to walk off with this computer, that would be a felony in Florida. They would no longer be allowed to vote if they were convicted.
That would also be a cell phone.
Yeah, that would be actually the cell phone is worth the cell phone is worth twice what this computer is worth. So yeah, that would restrict someone from voting then, correct?
Yeah, up until this previous amendment just passed. So every state also gets to determine whether they allow, whether they restrict the voting rights of people with felony convictions. So those laws vary quite a bit by state. So some states, it doesn't matter, right? Maine and Vermont, for example, you can vote even while you're in prison. You never lose the right to vote. In other states, your right is restored as soon as you're released from prison. So it varies quite a bit, but Florida was not just one of the states where it's most easy to get a felony, but where the implications of a felony were the most strict.
Yeah, and you said, like, what, 10% of the population in Florida is restricted through voting laws?
They were up until this amendment just passed.
Yeah.
So it's about about 10% of U.S. citizens in the state of Florida have a felony conviction.
Wow, I was listening to an interview with someone in Florida who has never been able to vote. Because you can't vote until you're 18, and apparently he was charged with something when he was 18 years old, and he's never voted in an election until this year because of this amendment, and he's like 30-some years old. He's never had a chance to vote.
Yeah, because of these laws. So Florida is there's only 4 states in the country where you're permanently disenfranchised unless the governor or a governor panel intervenes on your behalf. So yeah, Florida's full of, up until this amendment passed, it was full of people who were disenfranchised, often for decades after being released from prison.
Now, is it normal to restrict someone's voting rights? Because I imagine, like, a lot of people think, oh, somebody kills someone, for example, and that's what they think of when they think of a felony, something major, right? And they say, well, that person shouldn't be able to vote. That's what a lot of people's mindset goes to. And is that true around the world? I feel like that's where a lot of people, they think they hear felony, and that's how people pass things off. It's kind of like Nixon with the whole, law and order type of thing. People get behind law and order. They think, oh, it's not racist or it's not this or that. It's law and order. I feel like with voting, people hear, oh, it's a felon. We don't want a felon voting.
Sure. I mean, when people think of a citizen with a felony conviction, there's a stereotype associated with it, but most people with felonies are not convicted of violent crimes. The vast majority of them are nonviolent crimes. But even so, regardless as to what constitutes a felony, if you look at it from an international perspective, the idea that you would take away voting rights as a punishment is a uniquely American concept. That's something in most democracies in the world. People don't lose their voting rights because of crimes. That's not part of the punishment associated in their criminal justice system.
See, that seems so weird because here in this country, you don't hear about any of that. It seems like it's so normal to do that because I guess it is so widespread, right? I mean, you said there's only, how many states did you say that you can vote no matter what?
Well, there's only 2 states where you can vote while you're in prison. But,
yeah.
But most states, like Pennsylvania, for example, you can't vote in prison. But as soon as you're released, your right to vote is restored. So most states have some sort of automatic restoration. It's usually either after you're released from prison, after you complete parole, or sometimes after you complete probation.
Now, do you see more of these harsh voter restrictions in southern states where, I mean, I know obviously we had a racial issue, because I do think that primarily voting restriction, it is a racial issue, I didn't always think of it that way until I started really thinking of my history and about Jim Crow laws and voting laws and things like that they had in the country. And it really started to make sense, like, oh, this is a way to try to stop certain populations from voting. Do you see more restrictive laws in the South than you do in the North just because of the history?
In general,
area?
Can you still hear me on this
Yeah.
mic? Okay, I lost sound here, but that's okay. In general, so in the South, it tends to be more restrictive. There was one study that was done that looked at like sort of a predictor of whether a state allows their criminal population to vote. And one of the biggest predictors was the percent of non-whites in the criminal population. So there are some people that have done research on that. Regardless as to the intent of the laws, the implications are definitely disproportionate across racial groups.
So talk about how you did this study. Like, how did you put this together?
Yeah, so in my project, there's been a lot of people who have tried to look at the effects of being disenfranchised, but it's been really hard to do that because these laws are not random, right? People who don't have the right to vote are different from those who have the right to vote. So what I wanted to do was try to isolate some sort of a causal estimate, right? What happens when people have their rights restored? So what I did is I found a state where a lot of people just got the right to vote restored, but didn't know it yet. So this was the state of Virginia about a year or two ago. So Virginia is another state where you're permanently disenfranchised once you have a felony, and you only get your voting rights back if the governor signs an executive order restoring your individual voting rights. So it's one of the most strict. It was.
And it's very subjective too, because it's his opinion. It's
Yes.
not like it's going before a board or a jury or something like that.
Yeah, the governor has full discretion.
Wow.
So previous governor Terry McAuliffe made this unprecedented decision to restore voting rights to everybody he had the power to restore them to. And so he signed over 150,000 executive orders in his final year of office, restoring voting rights to over 150,000 people. But there was just, because of the way it happened, there was sort of court challenges and it was overturned, but then they did it again legally. A lot of people just had their rights restored but didn't know it yet. And so for someone like me, that was a really great opportunity to go to Virginia and work with this population. I would kind of survey them before and after an election. And some of them, I would make them aware, right, sort of give them this information, like, hey, you might not know this, but your voting rights have probably been restored. I can look it up for you. And then a lot of people would find out right there in my office that they're,
wow.
sometimes after decades of disenfranchisement, that their voting rights were restored.
What kind of responses did you get from people? Like, what was the reaction when they found out?
It was awesome. It was always a really good moment. People would be really excited. Sometimes people would cry. They would say, like, I can't wait to tell my family. Or one person sent me a text, like, I feel like a full citizen. It's for a lot of people a source of pride. Right? There's this idea that when you take away somebody's voting rights, you're out of prison, you're trying to rehabilitate, you're trying to re-enter society, but you have this stigma and you have this penalty that follows you everywhere you go. And to have that lifted and to have the governor to actually sign an executive order for just me, really just people got really excited about it.
It's interesting because so many people don't vote. And they just make a decision not to vote. And then there's all of these other people. It's almost when you lose something, it matters so much more to you, I guess. In a way.
I mean, there's two things, right? One is having the right to vote and one is actually voting. And even among people who don't vote, if you took away their right to vote, they would be very upset about that.
Yeah, that's true. No, it's like anything else. Some people may choose not to speak, but if you take away their right to speak, they're going to be obviously livid about that, losing that ability. It's interesting. So what were some of the reactions like what were some of the implications? Like, what did you find out in these studies? Like, what's people's next step? Did they say did they plan to vote, or are they?
Sure. So I do actually track. I'm able to get the voter history files, so I can see a number of them did register and a number of them did vote. But I was actually interested in other types of outcomes. So a lot of people focus on turnout and electoral outcomes, which are really important. But what I was focusing was actually individual attitudes. So I look at their surveys before and after the election, and I try to see how people shift their attitudes, like pro-social, pro-democratic, kind of things like trust in government or believing in yourself, trust in the criminal justice system. There's a lot of evidence, right? If you think that laws are created in a just way, you're more likely to obey those laws, and you're more likely to feel like you're a part of the system. And I find pretty much across the board that when people found out their right to vote was restored, all of these pro-social, pro-democratic attitudes are going up.
I feel like that makes a lot of sense because you feel like you go to prison, you do your time, as they say, you're doing your time to make up for some act that you did, and when you leave there, you're supposed to almost have a clean slate. But really, with some of these voting restriction laws, you don't. You come out of prison almost still as if you haven't done your time.
Yeah,
so
I mean, there's so many different pieces that go into this reentry puzzle. But if you talked, and I've had conversations with a lot of people in this population, when people come out of prison, they don't have training in the new technology. They don't have a place to live. They don't have a job history. It might be hard to get a job. Not having the right to vote it's one piece of this giant puzzle of kind of things that make you feel more isolated.
I'm reading here in some of your notes that the voting laws, it actually, whenever you have the right to vote, you give people the right to vote, it actually lowers crime. I mean, I think that kind of makes sense because, like you were saying, you feel like you're part of society by being able to vote.
That's one of the big implications of my work, right, is trying to suggest, I don't actually look at crime rates just because my study is not looking at the long term yet. It just happened. But all of these attitudes are associated with lower crime and lower recidivism. Right? This idea that if you feel invested and if you feel valued and that it helps people sort of transition from this identity as a criminal to an identity as a citizen. And that transition is what helps people actually re-enter into society. And so the implications is it does suggest that, right, not only is disenfranchisement affecting turnout and affecting outcomes, it's also making it harder for these people to transition back into society, which would be increasing crime, increasing the cost of criminal justice.
So how did you find these people to do this study? Because you can't just like pull up people's voter registrations and things like that to get the information.
Yeah. It's always a challenge. So I tend to work with populations that are hard to reach. So basically, we just advertised the study all over. Actually, I moved to Virginia it was November 2017. So I moved to Richmond, Virginia, and I was recruiting citizens with a felony who have completed their probation, and I would pay them to do the survey. So I didn't mention anything about voting or elections in the recruitment. It was just come and earn money to do a survey, and then some of them would get offered this extra information. I took out ads in newspapers, Craigslist, Facebook, put flyers in corner stores all over the city, just really tried to advertise anywhere I thought a potential subject might be likely to see the recruitment.
Did you get any resistance from people? Like, was anybody unsure or uneasy about taking part in the study because they just had this experience of going through prison and things like that, and it may seem official, you know what I mean?
Sure.
Like,
no,
seem
that
official as far as
happens a lot.
government. It's official in the study, but you know what I mean? Like, I could see people being, like, uneasy, especially with having that past and living in a society where they still are, as you say, stigmatized.
Sure. No, yeah, a lot of the recruitment and a lot of the effort that went into designing those materials is trying to make the study seem legitimate and to make people feel comfortable. So I rented offices in this really nice professional office building with a secretary. I have the university logo. It's right. You need them to trust you. Right?
Sure. Yeah.
People might be worried, is this a sting operation? Are you going to come and take my fingerprints and try to send me to jail? Or there was a lot of effort, and there's definitely a lot of people that would not come because they just weren't quite sure, is this person really going to pay me $25 to take a couple surveys, right? So it was always challenging to convince people of that.
What kind of effect do you feel that having people's voting right restored will have on the political process going forward? Do you think it'll have any kind of political ramifications, or do you think it's just the right thing to do?
I mean, as far as the political ramifications, there's a lot of people that have done research into this, like how it might affect turnout or electoral outcomes. Ultimately, we don't know until it happens, right? It's hard to know how people who are not politically engaged will vote once they are. One thing that I think was really amazing about Amendment 4, so this was the amendment that just passed in Florida, and it completely changed their constitution. So now there is this automatic restoration of voting rights. 1.5 million people just got their right to vote back in Florida, which is incredible. It's a really big number. So people might focus on how that's going to affect electoral outcomes. But one thing I thought that was incredible about Amendment 4 passing is it had huge bipartisan support. So a lot of people might associate this as a Democrat issue, but that's really not the case. In this, actually, more people voted for Amendment 4 than any candidate on the ballot in the state of Florida. Right. Like,
so the people were behind it there.
Yeah, it was endorsed by a number of people on both sides of the aisle, of the political aisle, and the idea is that it was. Right, I think it's important to take these issues about voting rights. I think it's really problematic when people try to make them a partisan issue. Like, which party is this going to help or going to hurt? Because that's not the reason we should be deciding who has the right to vote. right? I think those things should be decided on principle. And I feel like that's something that the fact that this ballot measure had such bipartisan support, I think Florida showed that that's what most of their voters were doing.
Well, I think it's refreshing also to hear that so much of the general public came out in favor of this because, as you said, there is a stigma. And a lot of times in people's minds, maybe somewhere like Florida where there's so many people that don't have the right to vote because it's, like you said, only $300 and theft can lose you your right to vote. Maybe that has had an effect because I feel like still a lot of people, they think of the major crimes when they associate a felony with somebody being convicted of a felony. So I think maybe that has helped. But I feel like studies like yours will help educate people, and maybe that could help people learn and kind of move towards that direction of wanting to restore voting rights, because I feel like a lot of it's misinformation and just a wrong perspective as to what a felony conviction actually means.
Sure. I mean, yeah, I think in Florida, because it was so extensive, right? I mean, if you know 10 people, one of them probably has a felony in Florida. Because it was so extensive, I think that did make it personal. And a lot of the campaigns tried to personalize it. They tried to take the stories of these people who were convicted of something very minor a long time ago and just show how extensive these restrictions are. And I think one thing that I think is really exciting about the research I'm working on now is these are implications that affect a lot of people. Right? This idea of, you look like in state prisons, 95% of people in state prison are going to be released, and more than 75% of those released are rearrested in 5 years. So it's just, I mean, the recidivism rates in this country are really high. We have a terrible record as far as successful reentry. And what this study is showing is that this is one piece of the puzzle, right? That when we take away people's voting rights, we're artificially causing them to become less trusting and less socially and democratically inclined.
I think part of the problem, too, is we have this private prison system, and we almost have a culture where we try to kind of put people away in prison. So in a state like Florida, when something so minor can give you a felony, it's almost easy to happen. You know what I mean? Like it's almost like in certain states we're looking to put people in prison, it seems.
Perhaps. I mean, but one thing that was unique in Florida is it wasn't just people in prison, right? You could get a felony and never do time in prison and lose your voting rights. So absolutely. I mean, if there's financial interests to put people in prison, then that's going to affect this issue. But a lot of these laws, it's people, even after release, people, after they finish parole and probation and decades later, still being disenfranchised. Yeah,
I think of these kids. When I was younger, these little jerks broke into my vehicle and stole the radio out of my car, but they were young kids, and unfortunately the magistrate did nothing to them. They got off with basically a warning because he said they'd only have to pay if it was a convenience for them. If it wasn't convenient, they didn't have to pay. But still, if that was in Florida, they could have lost their voting rights because that radio would have been at the time worth more than $300. So something so minor. I mean, it was made me angry, of course, but in the grand scheme of things, that's a very minor thing, especially for someone that's so young. People are stupid when they're young and they make stupid mistakes, and something like that could have like these long-term ramifications previously in a state like Florida.
Yeah, and so there's still, Florida's still one of the most strict in the country, but now once you finish parole and probation in Florida, except for people convicted of murder and felony sex offenses, everybody else, as soon as you finish probation, your rights are restored. So you don't have this permanent disenfranchisement. But there are still maybe 200,000 people in Florida who don't have the right to vote because of these laws. It didn't restore them for everybody, but it was... Yeah, 1.5 million is a lot of people. That
is a lot of people, yeah. And I think it shows how many people are being restricted if it's not everybody, and it's still such a large amount. So what's next with the study? What do you plan to do with the study now that it's finished and out there?
We'll see. It's I'm just working on getting it published now. It's been getting a lot of publicity just because of this big amendment that just passed. It's really exciting what's happening in Florida. So this law will go into effect in January. So there's going to be a lot of movement on the ground there trying to make people informed, right? A lot of the problem is misinformation. A lot of people don't know that their rights have been restored. So I think there's a lot of interesting opportunities to do research there. I'm not sure exactly what my next project will be, but I'm really excited to see what happens in that state in the next few years.
Yeah, it's really interesting because someone like myself, I live in this media world, and you get everything almost force-fed to you, right? But if you just come out of prison, you don't have any money, you don't have internet at home, you don't have all of these resources available to you, you may not know. It may be hard to reach some of those people. They don't have cable TV, which I don't, but I have all these other things. You don't have cable, you don't have internet, you're living at a homeless shelter, like you said. It's hard to get the information out to those people. So it'll be interesting to see how they market to those people in Florida to make them aware of these changes.
Yeah, I mean, part of it too is the new voting form in Florida says there's a box, right? Have you been convicted of a felony and have your voting rights been restored? And as long as you check the box that my rights have been restored, you can register. But a lot of people, for example, might, right, even if they know Amendment 4 passed, they might not know, do I have to do something? Do I have to apply? Do I have to get paperwork? And they don't. It's automatic. But spreading that information and making people aware, it's going to be a tremendous effort.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how things go. I'm interested to see how your study helps shape maybe some other states in reforming their voting laws as well. Thank you so much for coming on.
Okay, great. Thanks for having me.
Victoria Shineman, she's a professor at the University of Pittsburgh. Really fascinating study. You can find out more at victoriashineman.com.
Yeah, sure.
Find information out there. That's Victoria Shineman. I'm Brian Crawford. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we have the new Top 5 segment, Top 5 Stories that I have found interesting. It could be from all over the world. It's going to replace the old Weird News segment. It's the first trial run for the news segment, so we've got that up in just a few minutes. Welcome back to the River's Edge Radio Network. Brian Crawford here at Mr. Small's studio on River Talk at riversedgepgh.com. The top 5 stories of the week. We're going to be changing the way we weigh everything. According to PBS, the kilogram, we're changing the way that we understand measurements. So there is an actual piece of platinum in France that is the measurement for the kilogram, and everything in the metric system is based off of this piece of platinum, but it is starting to deteriorate, and they are changing the way that we measure the kilogram. They're going to be changing it to a style where it's not going to be based off of this element anymore, so it'll be more consistent. I just thought it was interesting that there's an actual piece of platinum that has been the standard, which, if you think about it, is even then, even with that platinum degrading, right, it's still way, way more of a firm standard than the foot or the inch, which literally was just someone's foot, and 5 feet. That determines how long something is. I mean, it's so inconsistent. I mean, it's become standard, the system, but really, if you think about the way it was rooted, it was just all over the place. So I thought that was interesting. It's just such a big deal, and I don't know why I never thought of the metric actually being based on anything. I just thought it was kind of, some people decided that this is what it is, and that's what it would be. So that's kind of interesting. Trump, the forest fire situation. So he went out to California. He trashed forest management in a tweet, and then he continued to trash them when he went there. He kind of walked back a little bit, but he has talked about in the past cutting funding to California because of the wildfire situation, which makes absolutely no sense. If it's such a big natural disaster, because forest management, let's just give him the benefit of the doubt and say that he's right. Forest management is the issue, right? Which I don't think it is, but let's just say it is. How does cutting funding to the program help the program get better? I never understand. That's like such a Republican thing. Oh, the school system isn't doing well, so we're going to starve it of resources. That'll turn things around. Fire management. There's wildfires ravaging California. So many have died. An entire city destroyed. So let's cut the funding to forest management. That'll solve the problem. This is why people hate Republicans. The third story for today is, and this is so many great stories today. The third one, Pittsburgh drivers rated among the worst in the country again. I just recently took a giant road trip, if you remember, down to Tennessee. Let me tell you, Pittsburgh drivers are not the worst in the country. Zach, you disagree?
No, I agree 100%.
Yeah. Pittsburgh roads are among the worst in the country. Pittsburgh drivers are not. Pittsburgh drivers are a victim to a terrible, terrible infrastructure that we have here in the city. You look at a lot of the on-ramps to these highways, there is absolutely no room to try to merge. And what results in this poor infrastructure is very, very poor driving. So people will come up to the ramp, they'll stop, and they'll wait to turn onto a highway. And because so many ramps are not long enough, even when they are, people have been conditioned in Pittsburgh to just stop and turn in instead of moving forward. The way it's supposed to work is you drive on the on-ramp and you reach a speed which is consistent with the lane that you are trying to merge into, and then you seamlessly merge in. But people in the city don't know how to do that because they've been trained not to do it. But my God, I went down to Tennessee and it was just a nightmare. Everyone's driving so slowly, erratically, just crazy. Here in Pittsburgh, we just have really, really bad infrastructure. You look at the Fort Pitt Bridge, for example, where you have multiple lanes merging together to then split among 4 different lanes. It's chaos, and all in a short, very, very short amount of time. It's not that big of a bridge. The stuff that we have to deal with is insane. It's actually kind of a miracle that people get by the way that they do in this city. And you take a Pittsburgh driver and you put them in Florida, for example, where you have these large, beautiful roadways. I feel like they're going to do okay. Speaking of Florida, my God, I was in a parking garage once in Florida. People were going like 65 miles an hour through the parking garage. It's absolutely insane.
Nice roads are wasted on Southerners.
This is true.
Yeah, nice speed limits.
Yeah, the speed limits as well. Finally, the speed limits have risen a little bit here in Pennsylvania, where you can at least get up to, what is it now, 80 miles an hour?
75.
I thought it was 80.
The biggest I saw was 75.
I think it goes up to 80 in certain places. Maybe I'm wrong.
I mean,
I think on some of the like the larger highways it goes up to 80 at a certain point. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Do you know? 412-4072-PGH. Let us know. Because I can't remember. I thought they rose it in certain places.
They might.
Maybe not. I don't know. Either way, our roads suck. That's.
We got them hills and the snow and the ice. It really weeds out a lot of the bad drivers.
It absolutely does. Coming out of Japan, the minister who oversees cybersecurity was testifying before Parliament. And the big burning question, the power plants, the nuclear power plants, can you use a USB stick to put information into the computers at the power plants? And the reason why the question was asked, apparently USB drives are a lot less secure than other means of relaying data and information. So they wanted to make sure that the power plants were secure. So they asked the minister in charge of cybersecurity about this very question. And his response was one of confusion. He looked at Parliament. His name is Yoshitaka Sakurada. He's 68 years old. He looked at them confused and didn't seem to know what a USB stick was. And when pushed on the issue, he actually told them that I'm not big on the details. He says, I don't know details well, so how about having an expert answer your question if necessary? How's that? You're the minister in charge of cybersecurity. You're supposed to be the expert. He has no clue. So then he also was quoted as saying that he has never used a computer. But he's in charge of cybersecurity. So I am thinking that maybe I, Brian Crawford, should apply to be the minister in charge of cybersecurity in Japan. Because at least I've used a computer, right? It would be a pay increase for me. I would have to convert my money, but the pay increase would be huge. So what exactly, my question is what exactly does it take to become a minister in Japan? I guess you just have to know Shinzo Abe, and that is the way you get into office. This guy's crazy, though. He also was quoted as saying that comfort women, which were Korean women who were used as basically sex slaves, were just prostitutes during World War II. This guy is insane, and he's still in the government. The fifth story for today has to do with cupcakes. My work, they were giving away free cupcakes. They ordered thousands of cupcakes to give to the employees. My place where I work, my full-time job, it's open 24 hours a day. Well, not open. It's not open to the public, but it operates 24 hours a day. And they wanted to make sure that there were cupcakes for everyone. So they brought in thousands of cupcakes. And the big shocker to me is the fact that there were still cupcakes left. And I know you think, wow, thousands of cupcakes. Of course there's cupcakes left, Brian. What are you talking about? You've never seen the people where I work. You give away something for free, and they turn into animals. It's insane. There are these people who waddle around, who have diabetes because they haven't drunk anything but Turner's iced tea for the last 20 years. But the water goes out, and they're giving away free bottles of water, and people are running like it's a deal on Black Friday in Walmart. They're waddling over to the water, grabbing 6, 8, 10 of these bottles of water. These people haven't drunk a bottle of water in the last 15 years, and here they are hoarding them like a squirrel with acorns. It's insane. It's like a feeding frenzy over these bottles of water. I couldn't believe that there were cupcakes left over. You give somebody something for free where I work, and my God. You can see the dust behind their feet as they rush for something that they're never going to use. But because it's free, I mean, God, they had open season upstairs for the insurance where you can upgrade your insurance or change your insurance. So people were up there grabbing every little free bag and pamphlet that they could get. My only thought is maybe the cupcakes were not up to their standards. At the end of the day, My thoughts are, if you really appreciate me and you really want to show me how much I matter, save the money on the cupcakes and give me a fucking raise. Those are the top 5 stories. If you have any thoughts on those stories, please let us know. 412-4072-PGH. You can also message us in the Facebook Live feed at River Talk PGH. I'm Brian Crawford. This is the River's Edge Radio Network, and I'm happy to say that we have had a second radio station now for over a year, the Metal Edge at metaledgepgh.com. And with me right now is one of the 2 people behind the station, Zach Fehl. Zach, welcome to River Talk.
Thanks for having me. It's been a long time.
Yeah, it's been some time, but we like reoccurring guests, good guests here on the show. So the Metal Edge, it's been over a year now. When was the exact date for the year?
Do you want the public date or when we started listening?
The public date.
Officially speaking, it was November 12th of last year.
November 12th, and so it's been a little over a year now.
It'll be a year and 1 week tomorrow.
Let's talk about how all of this started, the Metal Edge. So it's been, one of our goals is we want to have several different stations pop up within the River's Edge community that are more genre specific that you can listen to, and the Metal Edge was kind of the first dip into those waters.
Yeah.
And it was definitely, it was something that I wanted to do. It was great. So I'll tell you a little bit about the back end on the River's Edge perspective, and maybe something that you didn't know. So we originally were talking, you, myself, and Jonathan Kilback, who is another one of the people involved in the Metal Edge, about starting a metal news show. This is what's going on in Pittsburgh metal. And I'm always thinking like 2 or 3 steps down the road. And I thought, if we got this metal news show going, we can start signing in metal music. So it would be a mixture of news and metal music that would be played on the show. I thought, well, if we get that show started, we can start signing metal bands, and eventually we can start a metal radio station.
The River's Edge would become a metal station if that was the case.
Well, I don't know, because we have so many great other music on the River's Edge as well. But it would definitely have a lot more metal music on it. But my goal was to try to build up that library and then spin off a second station. Well, my business partners at the time, Sarah Kramer, who still is a business partner and part owner in the River's Edge, and Tom Benoit, who was with the River's Edge at that time, they came up to me and they said, Brian, we want to talk about this metal show. And I'm just thinking in my mind, oh no, they don't like the idea or something like this. So they come down, they have a meeting with me, and they say, we would like to, instead of starting a metal show, launch a metal radio station. And I thought, well, damn, that's exactly what I wanted to do in the long term anyways. So we got to work on that. So tell me, what all went into launching the Metal Edge?
Well, most of it was kind of figuring out the streaming capabilities of how to be able to actually play and go 24/7, be able to play music. But from there, it was mostly getting involved and seeing who's in the area, what's all in the area. Because between me and Jonathan, we knew a lot of people, we knew a lot of bands, we knew kind of a general understanding of what was going on. But I don't think we understood how much there was, and that was a lot of it.
Yeah, it's eye-opening, isn't it?
It was a lot of research in seeing who's playing with who, where are they playing, what venues are kind of more metal friendly. Because let's be real, we're not showing up to the Acoustic Cafe for an open mic night.
It's a great open mic night here at the Funhouse of Mr. Smalls.
Exactly, great open mic night, great they're great acoustic acts, great speakers, but you're not
incredible hosts like last week. I'm just saying.
Oh, fantastic talent across the board, grace that stage. The problem is they're not really bringing in the moshing crowds. So, finding out what places were a little more friendly to the extreme music, and it's kind of just snowballed from there.
I feel like this was something that was really important for the metal scene in particular. You look at the social media response, for example. Like, you guys, anything you post is gold. You can't make a mistake. You post something and everybody gravitates towards that. I think part of that is a great job in social media management on your part, but another part of it is the fact that I think there is this need for something like the Metal Edge in the metal community.
I mean, not to talk trash on our competition too hard, but there's really not much support in the mainstream, well, really at all, for more extreme music and metal in general, but especially not in the area here. At most, you're getting a hat tip from some of the others, but the community's here. I just a bad comparison, but I just saw Metallica sell out console. That's what, 50,000 people. Mm-hmm. That's a lot of metalheads in the area. We always get all these great shows at all these venues, but nobody was talking. There was so we just got them all together, had a big group hug. Now we're all listening to music together.
So do you feel like this has helped connect the metal community, having the Metal Edge? Because I feel like...
Oh, definitely. I think there's a lot more... I don't know if it's just networking or people seeing what's out there, or you're bringing things that are still in a similar vein. They're still around you, they're still playing around you, but it makes it a lot easier to find them. I'm not sure if I have a better way to describe it than that.
What were some of the bands that you have discovered while putting together the Metal Edge that you did not know about beforehand?
Oh, man, you're throwing me off on this one. Did not know about.
Which one that really stood out to you? Which band did you discover that you're like, wow, this band's fantastic?
They broke up, or at least they've been inactive for a while, and I'm really upset about this. There's a band called Atlas Decay. They're kind of in like this more progressive melodic side of things, like Coheed and Cambria, that I thought was super awesome, and unfortunately haven't seen them playing around lately, but they're one of the ones that I found and was like, oh, wow, this is amazing. Why do I not know about these? Why do other people not know about, all the bands out there like this? And now we're starting to get to the point where people, as they're coming out and coming around, they're starting to come to us, which makes the whole research thing so much easier.
Yeah, it does, and I've noticed that with the River's Edge, both on this talk show and with bands, people are always reaching out to us to get into rotation. Even with the talk show, I get so many press releases. In fact, I've had to ban some people's accounts. So some people will send me like there's this one person who sends me, no joke, 5 press releases in a day.
I don't read that many emails a day. Don't do that.
I blocked the email. I'm like, I'm sorry, I cannot read 5 press releases, and I mean they're full press releases. It's not even just like a little blurb. It's like a full thing, which I appreciate a long press release, a thorough one, but one press release.
I cannot take them all.
Yeah,
I don't want to respond to that many emails. I don't want to read that many. I'm a busy person.
Exactly.
We both work full time outside of this. I don't.
No, yeah, too many. So and then important emails end up getting buried with frivolous press releases that often don't even revolve around things going on in this area, which is
band from outside the town with no relation to anyone in the area is going to be playing in an area that's kind of close to you. It's like
the next state over.
It took me a minute or two just to find that they're not important to what's going on with me right now.
Yeah.
Don't have time for that. All that.
So you guys have done a lot of live streaming here at the Funhouse with different metal performances and things like that.
We've been working with there's a couple of promoters starting to come up. They work mostly out of the Funhouse. We have the Crucible Project and Twist of Fate Productions, and shout out to Jason, Julia, Jerry, and all them that bring on some awesome music up here. They do usually like a monthly showcase of local hard rock, heavy metal bands playing up, in the Funhouse, and they make a big thing out of it. It's a lot of fun. Usually, sometimes get involved for either a charity or just local stuff going. However they want to put on the show. I'm not involved with actually putting it on the show, but they find some bands through us. We find bands through them. They have us come in and broadcast the show for anyone who can't make it that day, and we've been getting them up on our YouTube page, and clearly the higher quality than what Facebook's going to allow us to do. To, if you enjoyed the show, you can go back, enjoy it again, or share it with all your friends that didn't get to make it, or watch your own performance, see what you did, what you could do better, where to learn, what went well. And that's been a lot of fun. We actually got one of those coming up on Saturday the 24th.
Okay.
They got one coming on. Oceans to Ash and Transcendence, both of them on our network, and another band called Conflict Cycle, which I've not gotten to check them out too much, but we're probably going to be in touch over the next couple of days.
Nice. So what's next with you guys? What's next for the Metal Edge in your
that
in your growth? Okay.
That we're gonna be up at the Funhouse Saturday the 24th.
But I mean, in your long-term plans.
Long terms, it's been mostly that just connecting, getting bands involved, getting bands playing, getting people talking, getting the scene to kind of work together and branch out in ways that, you know, together we can do a little better than on our own. I know me and Jonathan have plans. We would love to be able to get a time to sit down and do a weekly show. Problem is, I know his schedule flips around a lot.
Yeah.
I find now that I'm no longer on the inconsistent schedule life, he is on the inconsistent schedule life. So that's been a bit of a struggle, but working through that. That's what I've been trying to do the streams we can at the Funhouse. We put out a newsletter every month, usually first 2 or 3 days. I try to get it out on the first, but hey, life's busy and I don't like releasing stuff on weekends if I don't have to. Called the Cutting Edge Newsletter. It's
The Cutting Edge is cool. Explain that real quick, because people may
Cutting
not know
Edge
that.
is we do this 3 times a day. It is an hour of just the newest stuff, the newest music to have come out lately, stuff that's, you know, the bands are they've either got a lot of shows coming up, they just put something out, maybe they just released a music video, and we feature that playlist. They play it from 9 a.m. to 10, 2 p.m. to 3, and 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. every day. And it's just all it is the new stuff. So if you want a little primer on what's going on and what's relevant, you know, with the Metal Edge, that is a place to tune in. But our newsletter, we have come out every month, and it kind of caps up what we're looking forward to in the next month and what all happened in the previous. So if you missed a Facebook post because, you know, the algorithms suck and you didn't see that your favorite local band just put out a music video, you know, we get them sent to us. We look for them. We're keeping an eye out and cataloging all this over the course of the month so we can bring it all together. And
plus, if you're just looking to explore and learn about new bands, that's a good way to do it as well.
Another way to do it. We list out somewhere usually between like 25 and 28 songs that we feature every month. That is what makes up our Cutting Edge playlist. And you can see what's all added to it, what's kind of depending on how good it is and how much you put out. Usually we'll do more than one song from a band. We'll do 2 or 3. So that's kind of a good indicator. Like, oh, this is new. This is good. This is something to keep an eye out for. On top of, you know, links to where you can find that music, where you can find the bands, maybe if they got shows coming up or if they just played a show. And, you know, it's just trying to aggregate all of that into one place to make it pretty easy to jump in and go, all right, I want to listen to some badass music. Where can I do it? How can I do it? We got a newsletter once a month showing.
One other big thing is you guys are working on automation as well. You're looking to do so similar to what the River's Edge has done. I don't know if you're a regular listener of the River's Edge and you're a big supporter of local music in Pittsburgh, you've noticed that there's been a big change in just the flow of the station. We went from a cloud-based system to in-house automation, and it really allowed us to expand the variety of the network. And you guys are now working on putting that into motion with the Metal Edge as well. So you'll be able to hear a better variety and better finely tuned playlists and things like that coming through metal-edgepgh.com.
That is it. It gives you a little more control over what plays when, what plays how, so that, you know, the problem with strictly at least random rotational blocks is that random doesn't have any consistency to it. So you kind of have to mess with their algorithms and what they have to be able to make something consistent. And I think we did a pretty good job with that. But having access to a couple more tools, I think would really make it a little more, you know.
You can also expand your library greatly as well that way.
Yeah, not being limited to what we can store on the cloud would help. Having access to a couple extra gigabytes would let us play with, I don't know, more back catalog stuff, some deep cuts. You know, we have our featured playlists. We also have a really special one to me. Drops in at somewhere around 4:20 p.m. and a.m. every day. Just some personally catered songs from yours truly that fit the time. So without getting into too much detail, just tune in, listen to it. It's fun. There's good stuff in there. But you're able to, when you have more tools to actually influence what plays when and how much. I don't know. There's just more stuff to goof around with and have fun with and play with, and it's just more toys.
Yes.
More toys to play with the music with.
Definitely makes it a lot more fun, and you can listen to the changes as they happen and keep up with the Metal Edge at metaledgepgh.com. So
Check
awesome
us
to
out
have
on
them.
Facebook, Metal Edge, The Metal Edge, or facebook.com/MetalEdgePGH. You can follow us on Twitter, Instagram @MetalEdgePGH.
And if you love my intro music, it's Scumbag Inc. It is on the Metal
Solar
Edge
Burn.
from Solar Burn. Yeah.
Oh, we love those guys. Their stuff plays all the time.
Yes,
They're
you'll
so
hear
good.
you'll hear Scumbag Inc. on the Metal Edge. You'll be like, oh, River Talk's starting. And you'll be like, oh no, I'm listening to the wrong network. So,
River Talk playing every day on the Metal Edge.
yes, so check that out, metaledgepgh.com. You can also check out the Mike Sasson Show. What is the Mike Sasson Show? It's a weekly, no-holds-barred journey into the minds of accomplished comedian Mike Sasson and his producer and co-host Alex Clemens, where no topics are off limits. Often funny and never boring, the Mike Sasson Show is Tuesday at 9 a.m. on the River's Edge at riversedgepgh.com. I'm back on Friday at riversedgepgh.com/live. I'll also be hosting the acoustic open stage at Hambones this coming, not this Tuesday, but next Tuesday, so a week from Tuesday. That's going to be at Hambones in Lawrenceville, so come check me out there. Lots of fun at in my opinion, one of the top 2 open stages in Pittsburgh. That's going to be at Hambones Tuesday night. I'm excited for this coming Friday. I'll be back with Jay Cooper right here in Mr. Small's Theater at the River's Edge. So that's some stuff you have to look forward to. And we have some other things in the works as well. So stay tuned to the River's Edge. Oh, one other big announcement. I didn't get a chance to talk about this much, but I do want to briefly mention it as we play out the show and wrap things up here. There's a grant available if you live here in the community of Millvale and you're looking to do something in the music community. You can find at the Millvale Music Festival's Facebook page the link for a grant where we will match up to $500 in funds from the Millvale Music Festival. And that's for music projects going on right here in Pittsburgh. So that's it for me. We're going to play that out. Speaking of
That was
scumbagging,
your ending.
that's why I said as we play out the show.
I was typing an important thing in the chat.
All right. So that's it. Don't forget, this coming Friday, 7 p.m., right here, riversedgepgh.com/live. Thanks to Victoria Shineman with the University of Pittsburgh. Thanks to Zach Fehl. I'm Brian Crawford. This has been River Talk. This is the River's Edge Radio Network.